Hello everyone, Ron again, and today we're going to start the journey to writing melodies. But before we can write melodies, we have to talk about chord theory so you'll understand the basics of how you choose what notes you choose. Action.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Now, in music, you don't really have to adhere to any rule at all as long as it sounds good, but you can make a better selection in a shorter amount of time when you have the theory behind it. So we're going to start by breaking down some chord theory. And we're going to have a bunch of terminology, so I'll probably leave it all in the description. The most fundamental knowledge in Western music that one can have is about the major scale. So the C major scale is this. It's just composed of all the white keys, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and back to C, but an octave higher. So the purpose of this video is to discuss how you can understand how to pick the notes and why those are the notes for this major scale. So the first piece of terminology is sharp and flat. When something is sharp, that means it's higher in pitch relative to something else, or in frequency. Pitch and frequency mean the same thing. When something is flat, that means it's lower in pitch or frequency. And this piano is the visual representation today. So if I hit C, D, because it's higher in pitch, is sharper than C. So if you hear somebody say something is too sharp, that means it's too high in pitch. If I hit B, B is flat relative to C because it is lower in pitch. So if you were singing and someone told you to sing a C and you sang a B, they would say that you were flat. That's what that means. Now we can talk about accidentals. Sharp and flat are the accidentals. Punching in. Alright, so accidentals are called accidentals if they don't fall within the scale that the song is in. So if you're playing something that's in C major, it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So C sharp would be an accidental because it's not within that range of notes. I was actually wondering why they were called accidentals, which caused me to look that up. And, well, that's better information to have. Alright, I'm out. Now, if you look at this piano and you go from C to the next note, C sharp, that's one semitone or one half step. If you go up two semitones, so you go C, starting at C, you go up two, 1, 2, that's a whole tone or a whole step. And that's important to know because of the next term, which is called an interval. An interval is the distance between two pitches or two notes, right? So in Western music, a half step or semitone is the smallest interval that we have. And of course, every interval has a name, which is a topic for a later video because this is going to stay very basic, even though there's going to be a bit of terminology. Now, in Eastern music, they do microtonality and they sing at lower intervals, but you can look that up because that gets really complex, and I'm not going to delve into that. Just understand that if you're looking at a piano and you go from C to the next interval, C sharp, that's one semitone. And if you go from C to D, that's two semitones or a whole step. And that's another interval. Likewise, if you went from D and you went down one semitone, that is also D flat. So C sharp and D flat are the same note. And that's going to become important later because of understanding why the scales are named what they are named. This is a topic that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, and it's honestly something that confused me for a while when I had to research it myself. Now, the next thing to understand is a pattern. A pattern, as I'm describing it now, is just something that repeats. I recognize that in FL Studio, up here you have patterns. Pattern 1, you can see citrus. Pattern 3, mini synth. That's not the type of pattern I'm referring to. That is terminology of FL Studio. But terminology of music theory, for my sake anyway, a pattern is something that repeats. So a melody is a pattern in a song because usually a song will have a melody and that melody will repeat. I discussed in one of the previous videos that a melody is a rhythm that changes pitch. You can define that way. And all these things are going to be important to know later on when everything comes together in context. So a scale, as like the C major scale, you can think of that as a pattern. And the scale is a formula essentially for what notes will sound good when they're played together and how they will sound, and certain chords will describe certain emotions. But for our purpose, you can think of it as a pattern that determines the notes that you'll use to write a song, because usually that's how you're going to look at it. Now, there are a bunch of different scales. There are scales like C major, C minor, C blues or jazz, and which scale you use is going to depend on the type of song you're writing and the type of feeling that you want. But for today, we're going to go over the scale pattern for a major scale. So, the importance of me telling you what a whole step and a half step were to make it to this point, and this is the most common description you're going to hear. The pattern for a major scale, starting from any note, is called the tonic, actually, the root of the scale, and it's the same letter that the scale is named after. So if it's the C major scale, or C anything scale, you know that the root note is C, so that is going to be the first note. And it's also going to be the last note most of the time. Again, that's something for later. So, the pattern is this: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So this is one of the most basic things that you'll find in music theory. So we start on C. We move up 2 semitones. We get to D. And that's a whole step. Another whole step. We move up 2 more semitones and we get to E. Now it's important to understand that between E and F and between B and C, there is only one semitone, because according to whoever was devising the scales and the calculations, they said that there was not a full whole tone between B and C or between E and F. So this is why it doesn't go to the black keys on the C scale. Because once you get to E, you do the half step. And a half step upward from E is F. So C, whole step D, whole step E, half step F. Then another whole step is going to lead you to G. Another whole step is going to lead you to A. Another whole step is going to lead you to B. and then the final half step will take you to C again. And just in case you're not familiar where C is located on a piano, I mean, it's labeled if you're looking in the DAW because you can see that it has C6 right here. But if you were just looking at a piano and you wanted to know where C is, you'll see there's two black keys here. C is always to the left of two black keys, and F is always to the left of three black keys. So that's F. When there are two to the left, that's C. So this is how you understand. So just to recap the entire thing, just so it won't be confusing to have the scale looked at all at once. From C, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So look over this if you need to, but that is the scale pattern for the major scale. I'm going to outline the notes of all the major scales because I could tell you that you could find them, and if you decide to on your own, then that is awesome. You're very studious. But for people who don't feel like it, I could tell you what all the scale degrees of all of the scales are, probably in the next video, because I've already decided to do that. It's like planned out. In that way, I can explain why certain notes are called sharp or flat in certain scales. And then you can get to the real challenging thing of when you're reading sheet music, understanding what key you're in, because the key signature is far more confusing than the time signature is. And I was asking around when I was trying to learn what it meant, and it was very hard to learn. It felt like no one was able to tell me. So it became one of those things that I really wanted to explain if anybody else wants to know. Because it's actually very simple for as complicated as it looks. And this will help you if you're ever reading sheet music. We're going to discuss the circle of fifths. And we're going to discuss a whole lot of things like what a chord is, what an arpeggio is, what an ostinato is, and a lot of different musical terminology that will give you ideas to help with melodies. And so look forward to that. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I thank you for watching. And as usual, have an awesome day. Peace.